gosh, I haven't even said anything
I was
yet.
gonna
They're
say-
applauding like that.
Did you bring friends?
Yeah, maybe.
Have you been to Scotland? Have you been to Edinburgh before?
I've never. I've actually never been to Scotland before.
Really?
My first time. Yeah.
Oh, well, welcome.
Yeah. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Listen, if everybody's like this, I'm moving here.
And you probably heard we've got so much good food for you to try.
I did just have a nice meal at the hotel. We just came in and I had a lovely meal.
Oh,
actually,
no,
yes.
not haggis then.
No, I didn't have any haggis.
Okay.
No, but it's my intention to try that. They laugh.
It can't be any worse than boudin, which somebody once woke me up at 7 a.m. to try.
Boudin's tough.
It's, blood sausage at any time of the day, but particularly first thing in the morning.
Yeah. There's another one too. What's the French one from Normandy?
Now, the only dish I know from Normandy is a stew that they put bits of dung in order to improve the texture. I've not had that one, but it's called jurot or something like that.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I watch out for it on menus, obviously.
Yeah. Ugh.
Anyway, can I ask you first of all, looking back on IMDb, and as we know, it always gets things right. Apparently your first role was in Prince's Honour as a soldier.
No, it's untrue. No, I was a glorified extra. I was supposed to have one line in the film, and it was taken away from me and given to a friend of Jack Nicholson's. So I never. I was just there for a few days or something, and you can glimpse me in the crowd somewhere.
But you're also second docker in Who's That Girl, apparently.
Yes, apparently, yes.
Right. Even you don't remember that one.
No, I have a vague memory of it, yeah. Again, it was one of those one-line things, and it never happened when you're first starting out. Someone says, oh, we got you this role, and something.
So what's the background to you, Stanley? Is it acting in the family? Is it in the blood? Do you have many actors in your family?
No, there are no actors in the family, no. I don't know why. I was always drawn to it. I think that I tried doing it when I was a kid in grade school, elementary school, primary school, whatever you call it. And when I got on stage, so I was probably about 10 years old, and I got on stage and I felt very comfortable. In fact, I felt much more comfortable on stage than I did off stage, I realized. So it just sort of made sense, like I would try to spend as much time up there as possible. And then in high school, I started doing it again. I started doing plays and things like that. And then auditioned for a conservatory in America and got in and spent 4 years studying in a conservatory, stage acting,
And all with the support of your family?
I'm sorry?
All with the support of your family?
Yeah. My dad's an artist. My dad is an artist and an art teacher. So, yes, they were very supportive. The only thing they thought that perhaps I wanted to be an architect, and which I would have liked to have been had I any mathematical skills, but I had none. In fact, the opposite of. So it seemed to be a natural choice.
Well, let's skip ahead. What's the most useful note you've had as an actor from a director, hopefully?
Do it better. It's true. It was Herb Ross, the director who died many years ago, who made a number of movies, some of which were very good, and I was in one that was almost good, called Undercover Blues, and this is 25-some years ago. And he was known to be one of the meanest people in Hollywood, and he was, but not to me. And I remember him. We were shooting in New Orleans, and I did this one take. It was a very broad comic thing, and I did a thing, and he looked at me and he said, "Do it better." And I said, "Okay." I knew exactly, but I knew what he meant. It wasn't meant to be mean. It was all the elements were there that were necessary for the take to work, but it could be better. That's all. And actually, it was probably the best direction I've ever been given. The second best direction I've ever been given is when you ask this one director that I worked with a number of times, who taught me a great deal about directing, a Romanian guy. And I'd say, well, what about this thing? He'd say, I don't know. That was it.
And just brought it back to you.
That was it, yeah. And then you go, well, I don't know. I guess I'll try this, or we could try that. But the sort of openness of both of those directions is the thing that I really loved. And then, at the same time, both of those directors did something which was the complete opposite of that, which was, so you'd be working on something, say, I don't know, or do it better, or blah, 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 blah. And then suddenly they go, okay, here's what you do. On that third word, put your eyes over here, raise your hand like this, and then glance over that way, and then you'll get the laugh, or something, you know. Mm-hmm. So being incredibly specific after being incredibly vague. But I think, that's the way I direct. Because I think that what that does is it allows the actor to experience and explore whatever they want, and then I, as a director, can see what works and what doesn't work, because I have the thing as a whole in my head. The film as a whole, or the play as a whole in my head. So I can say, okay, at this point, then we can do this. But the actor has explored all this territory. So they've gone through all this stuff, and then what they want is specificity at that point. What I want as an actor is specificity at that point. So those were to me, it was like both of those directors were great teachers to me.
I'm so glad you brought up directing, because I want to talk about Big Night. And also, when you look at the kind of things you were doing as an actor up to Big Night, a lot of them very conscious of your Italian heritage, but in a way that you were cast as mobsters and gangsters. I mean, there's a time when you're cast as an Arab. It's a bit of a refreshing change, but I mean, there's a very definite...
Yeah, who was also evil.
He was also evil.
And then even in the comic thing that I talked about, he was Puerto Rican or Hispanic. Yeah. All dark people are bad. Didn't you know that?
My bleach bottle and I say different. But my question is, was Big Night partly a reaction against that? That, you know, here you are, it's a depiction of an Italian family, you know, and it's not the stereotypical view that particularly mainstream Hollywood pictures tend to
Big Night was without question a reaction to the way Italians were portrayed in film and in sort of everyday life, but particularly in film. We didn't, I suppose, it was a conscious choice, but it was also, for us, it was my cousin and I wrote it together, and it was a twofold thing, in the sense that we wanted to, yes, depict Italian immigrants as not being connected to the mafia, because so few of them were connected to the mafia. The ones that we know about being connected to the mafia, we know all about them because they were larger than life. It's very romantic to make movies about them, and some incredible movies are made. The Godfather, Road to Perdition, Goodfellas. I mean, these are incredible films, but the majority of the Italian Americans, of Italian immigrants, had no connection to the mafia at all. It was something like 0.1% or 0.05%, some ridiculous thing. So we felt that it was necessary to make a film that sort of sent that message. But also we wanted to make a film that was sort of, I guess for lack of a better expression, a European film. A film that wasn't plot heavy and that ended ambiguously. And then we did that.
Well, we've got a clip, just a wee one, and if the projection booth's ready, let's have a little look. Big Night. With a small pause as the lights go down. So we're all going to go home and try and do that.
Now there's drama.
But I've used it as an example of utter confidence. And it's interesting that Bridget Jones actually has a scene where where Mr. Darcy is proving out his utter sort of male confidence because he makes an omelette in a white shirt. And I sort of think the confidence to do something splashy in a white shirt and do it well, that's the guy you want to marry.
The last one, or the?
I think it's the first one.
Oh, it's terrible. I've never seen them. But it's really bad. And Colin is one of my dearest friends.
And he never
But don't
makes-
tell him I've never seen them. Yeah, well, I guess confidence, yeah, I guess, I think the sort of the idea was, okay, look, hopefully if you make a film correctly, at the end of the film, we should know the audience should know the characters so well, that characters don't have to speak, that we know them like we know family members. So they can do whatever, and we want to watch it. We can watch their backs, and no words have to be said. So I guess that was sort of the thinking behind it. And then I think to allow something to happen in real time we don't see it very often on film.
No.
And the idea of eggs being like, the beginning of life and all that, like a new life, I suppose was the idea too. But I never even did any coverage for it.
Oh, really?
No, we did one
really is
shot. I did
confident.
one shot of the eggs in the pan, but I knew you'd never be able to use it because you could never cut from that really wide shot to this sort of tight shot of the. So we just said, okay, we did 7 takes, 3 of which I think were aborted, and then we had the 4 that we kept and decided on that one. But the shot continues, so Tony comes in, there's a whole sort of ending of the film, but it's a 5.5 minute shot, master shot.
Now, there's a couple of questions. One is that, here we have this Italian family on a big night, and they want to cook, or rather your character wants to produce really great, good tasting food.
Yeah.
But Ian Holm's guy next door, he's producing sort of slightly futzed around stuff, but people are consuming it. People, and it drives them slightly nuts that something that isn't made with the same level of care is going down so well. And what I'm really wondering is there any analogy to movie making there at all?
Without question, yeah. The whole movie's about this struggle between commerce and art, and how one chooses to live their life as an artist, but also what's the artist's role or the creative person's role in society as a whole. And instead of making that about a filmmaker or about an artist we made it about a chef. And the chef has those same sort of, creative impulses, and because I do believe that a chef is an artist, but also I suppose in some way it's like very clearly defined in the restaurant business, very clearly defined.
I mean, clearly you know your food and you love your food, but here's the acid test, Stanley. Have you seen Great British Bake Off?
Well, of course I have. Yes, of course I have. Yes, in fact, one of my wife's clients won one year. She's a literary agent, my wife. So yes, so that was. I mean, this is before I met my wife, but anyway, her client. So I'm kind of addicted to those shows. Not the baking as much as the cooking itself. No, like I was just watching the Great British.
Was it the creme de la creme one?
No.
That one's a bit beyond my.
What was the creme de la creme? I don't know.
Creme de la creme one is where really top-notch chefs are going around creating towers out of spun sugar and things like that.
That's too much. No.
Yeah. What's the other one? Is anybody know the other? There's Bake Off. There's creme de la creme.
Great British Menu.
There you go.
And then
Is
there's
that one the tasting with the Australian and Greg just saying everything the Australian guy says?
Oh yeah. Yeah, right. And then there was one I watched the other day where it's just great British food. I can't remember what it was, but it was Ainsley Harriott who was hosting it.
Yeah.
And it's like the Harry Bikers did a dish, and then Mary Berry did a dish. So it's all these like great kind of British classic meals, and it was it's just fascinating because the history of those meals is really interesting to me too.
Well, yeah, I suppose because you're now living in the UK.
Yeah.
Which is fantastic. You live somewhere like Barnes.
Yes.
You do.
Yeah, it's good. Now everyone knows.
Sorry. All back to Stanley's. Well, it's a little like finding out that Robert
I have
De Niro.
my phone number right here.
it's a little like Robert De Niro, you know, going out but basing himself in Fountain Bridge. It's just
Right.
not something
Right.
that we would think about. But it's lovely that you appreciate our British culture.
Yeah, no, I love it. I really do love it. And you know, the UK is like a food mecca now. It's kind of incredible.
That is kind of incredible.
Yeah,
That's a
I
bold
know.
statement.
Well, it is. But let's face it. I mean, it wasn't that 20 years ago.
No.
I mean, 25 years ago, it wasn't that. And now it's clearly that. It's incredible. It's incredible.
Because you've got a cookbook as well, haven't you?
Yes, so I did a cookbook a long time ago with my parents. I sort of put the book together. But then my wife and I, a few years ago, did a cookbook. It came out a couple of years ago, I think. Yes, so I want to do another one. I have a couple ideas for another one.
Well, I thought we'd start taking questions. You were primed. You know what to do. Lady there.
Stanley, lovely to meet you.
Nice to meet you too.
In Scotland, Edinburgh. Can I ask you, what you prefer, acting or directing? What's between the two? What's your favourite?
I like to do both. I think that one feeds the other. I mean, if I had my way now, I would prefer just to direct, but I make my money acting. So I have to do it. But I love doing both because you learn, one sort of informs the other. Thank you.
Lady with the dark hair just in this side. I will look over this side very soon. Lady there, thank you.
You did a fabulous job playing one of the main characters in The Lovely Bones, but he's quite a dark character, George. How did you get yourself in the mindset to play him?
Playing the dark character in Lovely Bones, it was hard. I must admit, it was. People always say, "Well, are you a method actor? Are you a, you know?" To a certain extent, I suppose, and sometimes you just kind of get up and do it. But with that, you know, with certain roles, you really have to dig deep. You have to do research. So, doing that research was very hard. Reading the books about people like, you know, reading books about serial killers, looking at documentaries, just images of the serial killers. And that allowed me to sort of create this amalgam of a bunch of different people and create that look. And then I went to the director with it and I said, this is what I think he looks like. Because if it's 1970s rural, suburban, East Coast, you wouldn't necessarily have had a sort of darker complected person like myself. He needed to be very innocuous, kind of very, for all like just an innocuous looking waspy kind of guy. And so that's why the hair color, eyes changed color, skin tone changed color, mustache, put teeth in to change the shape of my face a bit. Because I needed him to look more like, it sounds terrible, but like people that I knew growing up, not who weren't like that, but were sort of.
No wonder you had to go to bars.
Yeah, I know, yeah. People who were sort of quintessentially American faces, and at that time that was that sort of that look. Because I grew up in the suburbs on the East Coast, and. I remember like my dad's fathers would look like that. And as far as I know, they weren't child molesters or serial killers, but you never know.
Thank you for your question. Actually, I'm going to come to this lady over in the 1, 2, 3, 4th row with her hand up just now.
You've worked with so many great names. I've got just kind of two questions. Who's been your maybe favourite to work with, and also who have you not worked with that you would quite like to work with going on?
Oh, there are so many people I'd like to work with. I'd love to work with Isabelle Huppert, the French actress. There are so many. But I have been lucky. I think working with Meryl, I worked with Meryl twice, and those were both great experiences. I loved working with my now sister-in-law, Emily, and I'd love to be able to do something again with her. Deb Where's Pride, yeah, I know. I don't think that's going to happen, unfortunately. But yeah, I'm very lucky to have worked with so many great people. A few years ago, I got to work with Michael Gambon, and that was really exciting to me. In fact, I signed on to the job a lot of the reason was because of Michael and because of Sophie Grebel, to the Swedish actress, Danish actress rather, I'm sorry. Anyway, yeah, there are a lot of good ones.
Okay, gentleman right at the back, his hand right up. God, I hope it's a gentleman. If the lights are rubbish round here.
Yeah, that.
In the dark top, yes, you.
Sort of a follow-on to that. One of my favourite performances of yours, because I think it stands out uniquely in your work, is your portrayal of Adolf Eichmann conspiracy.
Yeah.
And I was wondering what you chose to do to single it out, because you're in a cadre of fantastic actors in that film, and I think your portrayal of Eichmann stands out amongst, in a room full of the worst people in the world. It's terrifying. Just wondering the process and what you feel about that.
Well, that was. Can I ask you a quick? Can the house lights go up? Can we make it brighter in the theater or no?
We can certainly ask.
Because what that'll do is.
As it goes in here.
It is?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Only because that light.
Somebody's
I can't
gone
really
off to
see
have a
you.
little check.
Adolf Eichmann, as you know, was one of the people who helped orchestrate the transportation of the Jews to the concentration camps, and was in the meeting. This film that he's talking about is a film called Conspiracy. It was made for HBO many years ago with Colin Firth and Ken Branagh and myself. And it was about the meeting that the Nazis had at Wannsee to decide on the final solution. They spent, an hour and a half deciding how to kill 10 million people. In fact, it was already in the works at that point. But in order to play Eichmann again, you had to find, because the thing is, they were real people. They weren't. People say, oh, they were monsters. They were just. But they weren't monsters. They were people, and that's kind of the point of it. That's why it's so horrible. If they were, we're kind of obsessed now in movies with monsters and aliens and all these things, but really, I mean, we're the most horrible things in the world. We're the things that we should be afraid of, not that other stuff. That's just invention. That's to me, that, I mean, it's really exciting and maybe it's fun to watch, but really, that's just pretending that it isn't us. It is us. We are the monsters, and we see it every day now, don't we? And we've seen it for centuries. It's not really, it's not that it's just that we have more access to it now. But it's been going on forever, since the beginning of time. So to play Eichmann, I had to find his quote-unquote humanity. And that humanity I found in basically two little fragments of when I was reading about him, which was when the Mossad captured him in Argentina. They took him to a safe house before they got him out of the country. And there was the guy who captured him, interviewed him, which he was not supposed to do. He was not supposed to talk to him, but he couldn't help himself. So he sat down and he had these conversations with him, and he talked to him about, he said, how could you do that to those people? He said, well, that was my job. That's what I was supposed to do. And he said, but what about the children? Don't you like, he said, I love children. I love them. I love children. He said, but you sent millions of children off to their deaths. He said, yeah, but they were Jewish. So the disconnect is what you see there. He doesn't understand. Like, he just can't understand. When they captured him, he was playing with his children in Argentina on the rug. They came into the house, and he was playing with his kids. And they took him away. And in fact, he started crying about children, how much he loved children. So you see this element of humanity, and then this complete disconnect. And it's the same with the guy in The Lovely Bones. So, but Eichmann is almost more in a weird way, more disturbing, because that was my job. Like, it was his job to do that. He saw it as his job. Like, oh, I have to take these bottles and I have to stack them over here. I have to take these children and then I have to kill them, and then I go home and play with my children. So finding that element of humanity was the key for me. Sorry, it was a long-winded answer to your question.
No, I think it was a great answer. We'll take this gentleman here with the tie. Nice to see somebody's dressed up.
I was coming today, I was glad I brought time. I have a perhaps a cliche question,
What advice I have?
Yes.
I don't know. You know, it's always a very hard question. I think the thing is you have to be true to yourself, and you can never. Don't compare yourself to anybody, because you're the only you. I think that's really, really important. I see a lot of young actors, and I did this as a young actor too. I wanted to be like someone. Oh, I want to act like him. Oh, I want to try to, see what so-and-so is doing. And then you think, what are you doing? You're just imitating those people. That's stupid. So you're playing a role, but you're imitating an actor. Like, it makes no sense if you think about it. Like, logically, it's stupid. So you just have to look at that role, and how would you do it? What's your interpretation of that role? And then I would say, learn about the theater, study the theater, go on stage, learn how to be on stage. That's really, really important. Work on your vocal technique, work and movement and all that stuff. I really do believe that's really, really important. And dialects are important. So I tried to do a Scottish dialect once, I would call a Scottish dialect for this.
Oh, you
TV
can't tease
show.
us with that. Come on.
No. This is what happened. I have to
Okay.
tell you this story. It's like a confession of sorts.
Okay.
So now that I have all you here, it's the only reason I came. I did this show, Fortitude, the thing that I did with Michael Gambon and
Yeah.
funny. No. So, so they said, okay, he's a Scottish, policeman.
Mm-hmm.
I said, oh, okay. Yeah, maybe I could, okay.
Okay.
So I sat down with the dialect coach,
Right.
whom I knew, and we sat down and we started to do it. And after about 10, 20 minutes, I looked at her and I said, this is a terrible idea, isn't it? And she goes, yeah, this is a really bad idea. She's one of the best dialect coaches in the world. And I pride myself on being able to do certain dialects. And so I said, I had to call the producers and say, I can't do it. I'm sorry. I thought I could do a I said, but it would be so embarrassing for everyone. So I didn't do it.
So the Scottish accent is.
Well, there are so
one-
many, first of all, there's so many
Yeah.
different ones,
Yeah,
right?
yeah. How do you know?
Even I recognize that, but I can't, there's no way I can, no way.
So did you get as far as?
Not even a
thinking-
wee bit, no.
Oh.
I mean,
I think we could have.
I keep thinking if I drink enough whiskey, it'll happen. It's not working.
Well, we'll have to make sure he's topped up on the whiskey front. Right at the back, there is a gentleman just near the emergency exit, one seat in. You, sir. Yes.
Hello, good afternoon. Apparently, before the first screening of The Godfather, Francis Ford Coppola turned to the person next to him and said, oh no, I've just made a movie about a bunch of guys sitting in dark rooms, talking to one another. And so he felt extremely nervous. Do you feel nervous before your screenings, and how do you deal with those nerves?
I do feel nervous to a certain extent, but if I could make a film like The Godfather, I would be incredibly unnervous. Yeah, I get nervous. Yeah, I do get nervous. But Francis Coppola is a true genius when you look at those movies, and I think particularly his early films are.
Yeah.
I mean, I was showing my son them. My son is 17 now, and he's very interested in film, and unfortunately, and we started looking at stuff, and we looked at Apocalypse Now, which after many, many years of not seeing it, just an extraordinary film. And The Godfather, the first two Godfathers, are arguably two of the best movies ever made. But I do get nervous. I do. But the movies that I make, or that I choose to make, are really very small, and I'm very aware that probably 50% of the audience is not going to care for them, and 50% will. I mean, that was the reaction to Big Night. They tested Big Night. MGM thought they were going to buy the movie. The movie had already been bought. And they tested it unbeknownst to us, and they came to us and they said, well, 50% of the audience liked the movie, and because they felt it was like a foreign film, And the other 50% didn't really like it because they felt it was like a foreign film. And I said, yeah. And they said, well. And I was like, well, what do you want me to say? Well, of course, what the fuck did you think was going to happen? Half the movie's in Italian. I was like, what? Anyway.
Didn't they, with Big Night, didn't somebody also suggest tacking on a happy
Yeah,
ending?
they wanted that precipitated them saying, suppose you change the ending. Now, of course, the ending, part of which you just saw, was heralded by every critic and they said, well, this is the best ending to a movie and blah, blah, blah. So then these, I'm sorry, idiots said, how about you change the ending? And I was like, that all makes no sense. If every critic in the world, and I'm not kidding, every critic said, this is the best ending, why would you change the ending? I mean, I hate critics, but when they're, when they compliment you, you have to listen to them. Anyway, needless to say, it was an impossibility to begin with. The sets had been destroyed. Nothing existed anymore. They were, anyway.
Let's
was
take, I'll take you in the lovely green dress, is it? My eyes are dreadful. Anyway, thank you. That was a lot of information.
To Scotland and to Edinburgh.
Thank you.
We will certainly come back again. We're thrilled to have you here.
Thanks.
Just to come back to the lovely bones, I have a friend, you may not like this, but I have a friend who can't watch you in a movie now because she sees you always as a paedophile. So how do you deal with the fact that you may be perceived like that in that role?
Well, all I can say is I'm never having dinner with your friend. I haven't. I think she might be the only one. It's a very personal issue. I don't.
I'm sure she has a problem, but
Yeah.
that's what she said to me because I mentioned
Yeah.
his name in another movie, and she said, "No, I can't watch him because every time I see him, I see this paedophile."
Well, she should see Beauty and the Beast, where you're a singing harpsichord, and that will take the pain away.
Yes, that's right. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, it's a children's film. Oh, that'll make her more uncomfortable, I guess. Yes.
You don't have a problem accepting a role that might.
Yeah, I know what you mean. Accepting a role where I might, yes. I did have a problem with accepting that role, actually. And my late wife, I was married before my first wife passed away about 8 years ago. And when she had read the book, and I said, Fia, Kate, and she's, okay, anyway. This is awful. I have been offered this film. And she said, oh, Stanley, I don't know. She said, don't do that. And I said, I know, because I don't like to watch movies where kids are, I can't stand to watch any of that stuff or even read books about it. I have great difficulty with it. But then I read the script and the story was it was very beautifully written. It was a story about loss and love and I read it and it was so lovely. I thought, I have to do this, but I have to figure out how to do this properly. So it isn't just the sort of twisting your mustache kind of evil. Again, he had to be a real person. So it was a difficult decision. Would I do it again? No, I wouldn't. No, I can't do that again. Oh, thank you. Thank you.
I feel slightly bad because we've got a clip of Lovely Bones.
Oh, that's great. Is your friend here? No? Well, I'm just staying at the hotel nearby. So
What do we think? Should we see the clip of Lovely Bones, or do you want to keep on throwing questions out to Stanley? Well, hands up in favour of the clip. Okay.
Clip it is.
Clip it is. Okay, projectionist, you're probably paying attention. We see a clip of the Oscar-nominated Stanley Tucci
right, yeah.
in Lovely Bones. Well,
I have no idea what your friend is talking about. That was her line.
you're very generous with the credit. I would have taken it. But, okay, that clearly wasn't Lovely Bones. You all know it was Devil Wears Prada. But it does bring up to a point that I wanted to say, which is I think you're really good bouncing off women.
I'm not touching that with a 10-foot. Even if I had one.
But really, I mean, you know, Meryl Streep, Anne Hathaway, but you seem to have a particular, you know, rapport with women. That
I love
really
women.
well.
Yeah, I know, I do. No, I do. I have a lot of female friends, male friends and female friends, but I always felt very comfortable with women, and I hate that kind of. We went out to dinner the other night, actually, with my sister-in-law and some friends, and it somehow got divided between the guys and the girls, and I was furious. And I don't, because to me, it's nice when everybody's talking together.
Yeah.
It's much more interesting. Women, a lot of times, are much more interesting and a lot funnier.
Oh, you're playing well here, Stanley.
No, I'm not kidding. I'm not just saying. I mean, my wife is here with me. I'm not alone in the hotel. I'm not trying to, you know. It's a very nice skirt you're wearing, by the way. But no, but I do. I find it really really interesting, and I think that was sort of from my upbringing too. That my dad wasn't like that. My dad is not a guy who was like a sort of, you know, he was, you know, athletic. He was an artist. He was bright. He was, you know, did everything, built things with his hands. He was very kind of, very manly, but he was never that kind of like men do this and women do that. And I really, and that's the way I grew up, and I think it's really, I think it's an important thing.
We were talking earlier about Meryl Streep.
Yeah.
Um,
She's manly. No, I'm
she,
kidding.
she has the look of Docker One from Who's That Girl, if you ask me. Yes, but
She is, yes, that's right, Dr. White, yeah.
but I mean, you worked with her really enjoyably, not just in Devil Wears Prada, but of course Julie and Julia.
Yeah.
Is it true that you cooked together? You suggested that you cooked together. This is a theme. Sorry.
Yeah. Yeah, because I was doing The Lovely Bones, and we were, at that point, we were shooting in New Zealand, and Meryl was doing Doubt. And I called her and I said, look, I know, because she was like literally going to finish Doubt and then go straight into, and I had a bit of a break between the two. And I said, look, I know you're really busy. I know we have a very short period of time, but I really do think it's very important that we get into the kitchen together. Not to sound too methody or whatever, but it's very important that we have at least one afternoon or a night in the kitchen together. Can we make a meal together? She said yes, so we planned it, and we chose to make, from Julia's book, blanquette de veau, which is a very incredibly heavy, creamy dish of veal and like a creamy veal stew. And we said that dinner would be ready at 7:30. It wasn't ready till 9:30. We were all pretty drunk by the time. And I was going to make some sort of vegetable thing, which didn't really work. She did make a nice tarte tatin. That was nice. And we had the blanquette de veau and about 18 bottles of wine. And my late wife was there, and a friend, and her, Meryl's husband, Don, and we had a great time. But it really helped, just that little bit. Even if you don't make anything that's good or whatever, as long as you're just spending that time with those ingredients, that's all that matters, really.
Let's take a question from the audience. Oh, I think we could just keep doing this for the lady there in the middle of the red thing around your neck. Sorry, is it not? No, I can see the other side. It's not a red thing around your neck at all. It's clothes. Anyway.
You said that you felt really comfortable on stage. So which do you prefer, acting on stage or screen?
I like acting on stage, but I haven't done it for a very long time because I had kids. And when you have kids, people think that, oh, you're in the theater, it's easy, you only work a few hours a night, and then, you have the rest of the day free. Well, it doesn't work that way, unfortunately. You really have to start, you have matinees, number one, so you'll have 2 shows a day on a Wednesday and a Saturday, and then a matinee on a Sunday, at least is the way it is in America. And you really start, so your day is basically from noon on those double days, it's over. And you're not done until 11 o'clock at night. Then you sort of eat dinner, then it takes you a while to get to sleep. Then if your kids are going to school at like 6 in the morning, you're not going to get up at 6 in the morning and take your kids to school. If you are going to do that, you're going to give a really not very good performance at the end of that evening. So I haven't done a play for 14 years for that reason. And I talked about this with Meryl, as a matter of fact. She didn't do a play for 20 years because of her kids. And the thing is, by the time you finish doing a play, too, you've done all that, you haven't seen your kids, then you're broke. So you have to go do a movie, you have to go away and do a movie to make money. Then you've missed like a year of their life. It's not worth it. So I did direct a play about 6, 7 years ago on Broadway, and that's what I hope to do more. But I may do some plays in London, because you can do shorter runs in London. As an actor, I might do some.
Or Scotland.
Or Scotland, yeah.
We have a Lyceum just across the road.
Sure.
If they made
Is
you
it
an
commutable?
attractive offer. Yeah?
Well, yeah.
I'd come up here.
Yeah.
We might leave some whiskey in the hotel room.
I'm in.
Okay. Well, I'll hold you to it. I'm going to have a look over this corner here, because I know we're sort of way. So this. Okay, we're going to take the nearest to a far away person. This gentleman here. You, yes. Oh.
Just wanted to ask you,
Don't fight about it.
working with Billy Connolly, and I was watching him on an interview talking about you, and he said at one point then he's on the fart machine. I was wondering if you could elaborate more on that.
I don't know if you caught that.
Yes.
Billy Connolly and the fart machine.
Yeah.
There's a story.
There's a story. Billy Connolly, I was just talking to my wife about Billy Connolly in the hotel room, quoting, of course, the lines I wrote for the movie that Billy was in, that we did together. And he was just so good. I felt so lucky to have him in that film, and then to, stay friendly with him over the years. Well, we were making this movie called The Imposters, which was a really disastrous farce that I made. It's only my fault, none of the actors' faults. And there was somebody brought, this is so silly, but there are those cups, and they have like a kind of gel-like substance in them.
Oh, yeah.
Do you know what I'm talking? It's a fart cup. So it makes these fart sounds. Well, somebody brought it on, and everybody started, and I thought Billy was going to die. He thought it was the funniest thing he'd ever seen. So every day there would be these sort of competitions as to who could make the best fart sound. And someone would... somebody would bend... This was how it went. Yeah. So somebody would be there. It would have to be 3 people. So you had the fart person, you had the person who was doing the acting, and the person who was giving them the action. Yeah. So one person would say to someone waiting, Billy might say to Alfred Molina, "Oh, Fred, it seems that you've dropped your handkerchief." And Fred would go, "Oh, have I?" And he'd say, "Yes, you did. You dropped your handkerchief." And then Fred would bend over, and Isabella Rossellini would be sitting there with the fart cup, and as he bent over to pick up his handkerchief, she would go like that, and depending on what sound, and then the person had to react, and they had to say, "Excuse me, I'm so sorry." That went on for hours. And crying with laughter. Adults. It was so terrible. Anyway. That's the joy of filmmaking right there. Yeah. It's a sophisticated bunch we have. Yeah. Sorry. Yeah. Thanks for bringing that up.
Right, there is somebody right second from the back with the glasses.
If I can dance, yeah. Not really.
Can you dance as well as Link?
No, God, no. No, I learned this is a movie, Shall We Dance, that I did a long time ago with Susan Sarandon and Richard Gere and J-Lo.
Yes.
And it was, I had to play this sort of office nerdy guy by day and a ballroom Latin dancer by night with fake teeth, fake tan, wig, all that stuff. And I still really can't dance. I was very excited to do the film because I thought I would really learn how to ballroom dance. Instead, what I learned were the absurd routines that I had to do in the film, and that was about it. But I was in very good shape, and about, 15 pounds lighter than I am right now. But it was really, really quite fun to do.
Yeah, I like Shall We Dance?
Yeah, it's fun.
Yeah, it is a fun movie.
Yeah.
And there's another person right at the back with a hand up. I'm pointing at you right now in the back row. Yes, you, the one that's looking is going, is it me? Yes.
Hi, I was just wondering what's the kind of movies that you like to watch when you have a little bit of free time? What's the kind of movie that you just sit back and enjoy?
Well, I have very eclectic taste. I must admit, I will watch Marx Brothers movies over and over and over again. They make me very happy. But then I also like to watch Ingmar Bergman movies over and over again. So there's very little in between for me. Although I am slightly addicted to the transporter films. I know it doesn't make any sense. But I did a movie with Jason Statham a number of years ago, just quickly for a couple days. They called up and they said, would you go do it? And I was like, are you kidding me? Jason Statham? He's my hero. And first of all, he's like the nicest guy in the world. And I think I really want to be him. I think that's, I had no idea, but I think that's what I realized.
There could be a family resemblance.
Yes, all bald men look alike, yeah. But anyway, so I I really love those kinds of movies, and those and like the Bourne movies. Matt Damon is a very good friend of mine, and he thinks also I'm a stalker, so I don't, I just can't get enough. I think they're incredible. I think they're just sort of amazing, because first of all, there's like it could never happen, all right, which is kind of great, but also the way they're directed is I have no understanding of how they do it. Like, as a director, it's the complete opposite of the way I direct, and I'm such an admirer of it.
Okay, let's have a question. Just next to the guy in the lightish blue, I'm guessing really. Oh yes, waving both your hands. Good one, like that move.
Hi, Stanley.
Hi.
I was just wondering, because you've got such a diverse body of work in terms of the roles that you play, do you actively seek out the kind of thing you want to do next? Do you see what comes your way? And is there any sort of role that you haven't played yet that you'd like to?
Yeah, I do try to seek stuff out, but normally it's just stuff that comes your way. I mean, the stuff that you seek out, you kind of have to create for yourself, which is what I've done over the years to a certain extent. And I have projects still that I want to do as a director that I'm generating myself. As an actor, there are a couple things I'm trying to put together, but they take years and years. But yeah, it's sort of whatever is put on your plate, and then you kind of go, I did that, that could be good, I sort of did that, I really like this idea, but it's not quite right, or, wow, that's a lot of money. So there's that.
Is Transformers out at the moment?
I don't know what you're talking about. Thanks for coming. Yes, it is. It's out. I think it's out now. It should be out now.
It is.
Yeah.
It's a very fine film.
Yeah.
And much improved on the.
Yeah, actually, it was really. I did this one, and I did the one before. I play a totally different person in this thing for like 5 seconds. But I had such a good time. I had such a great time, and I really love Michael Bay. I think he's just great, funny, so smart, and again, like the complete opposite of the way I would direct a movie or even know how to direct a movie. But you always learn something.
Okay, right. We are going to go into the center and just lady in with the white hair. Just you.
Hi, Stanley. You're obviously a bit of a foodie.
Wait, where are you?
Pardon?
There
she
you
is.
are. Oh, sorry.
So you're obviously a bit of a foodie. I just wondered what you would choose for your last supper.
your favourite supper
Yeah.
rather than your last supper.
Jesus. It's all over, huh? That's it.
I'm afraid the test came through, Mr. Tucci.
I know. My last supper. You know, I have actually been asked this question for like magazines and stuff like that, food magazines and stuff like that. It's very hard to say. There are so many things. Sometimes you think, well, I would just like to have some really great oysters and a martini. And then that's it. Like maybe you wouldn't really need anything else. And then, of course, you start to think about all those other things. So it would be very, very hard to say. But I feel like it might take place like around Lake Como, because it's pretty.
I like that,
Yeah.
the sound of that. Right, there is, just having a quick check that we haven't neglected any within the first 3 rows, we're okay. There's a gentleman with his hand up even now, who's very keen, up up by the aisle. Yes, you, the one that's looking behind.
So, as an actor yourself, when you're directing actors, do you find it easier to draw upon your own experience in guiding the performances of your actors, as opposed to perhaps some experiences you've had as an actor working with directors?
Yeah, both, I think. You know, you're always using your own experiences. And I think that a lot of times actors can make very good directors because they've had all the experience. They know what the actor's going through, or, you know. And yet at the same time, actors can be quite overly indulgent with actors if they're directing them. So I think you have to find a balance. I feel that rehearsal is really important. And that's not something that that you do in film a lot. So I always try to rehearse as much as possible and build that into the pre-production schedule so that everyone is as prepared as possible when we walk onto the set. Because the more prepared we are, the more flexible we can be. And a lot of times directors think that, oh, well, we're just gonna wing it, we're just gonna go there, we're just gonna do it. And then they get there and they haven't really figured out what it is yet. Once you know what it is, then you can wing it. But you gotta know what it is. Otherwise you end up wasting time, resources, and energy. The energy of your actors, the emotional energy of the actors, the physical energy of your actors. So let's create this structure first. Let's have this basic structure, this basic infrastructure of where we're gonna work from, like when you're doing a play. That's why I said to you before about doing a play. It's very important. That structure is really, really, really important. And then, when you get on the set, you can take all those ideas and throw them away if you want to, but at least you have them. At least you have this, you know, it's like saying, okay, we're gonna build a house. Great, let's start with the roof. You know, well, that doesn't work, does it? You know.
Any questions? Oh, straight up, this lady here.
Hi, Stanley. Script writing.
Mm-hmm.
Can you tell us about what makes a great script? And can you tell us either a project that you've worked on or a film that you've seen? What was your favorite script?
I think one of my favorite scripts is probably The Godfather. Actually, it's a beautiful script. I think Ingmar Bergman's scripts are pretty incredible. Woody Allen's Manhattan is maybe almost like a perfect movie and a perfect script. I think what makes a good script is believable, truthful. What's truthful, and that the characters are guiding, or seem to be guiding, the action, and not the writer, and that something doesn't have to be sort of hyper naturalistic in order for it to be believable. But if you feel that the dialogue is imposed, then it just doesn't work. And usually if the dialogue is imposed, a lot of times then the action is imposed too. So you have to kind of get to the point of, it's about stripping away, to me. And often if I go and do something, there'll just be way too much dialogue. You don't need a lot of it. Because a lot of times writers are not visual. And they think a lot of people, like a lot of novelists, will write screenplays, but they're not really, they don't work because they're not visual. And they sort of expect the director to impose that visual aspect. And a lot of times that doesn't work. There's a disconnect. They end up fighting each other. Too much dialogue, too much visual, as opposed to it being completely integrated. So that's why I suppose in some ways the auteur is kind of the perfect, if you can do it, that's the way to do it, is to start from the ground up. But the visual is completely connected to the dialogue. Do you know what I mean? So when I read a script, I mean, not all my movies work, but I know that when I write a script, it's almost like a shooting script. It's very clear, like what's happening. Like I'll say the camera does this happens here, this happens there. Because I know where I need the dialogue and where I don't need the dialogue. And then again, we go from there. So we have the structure, then we can keep breaking down the structure. They always say it's easier to take away than it is to, than to build, and it is. So you have to really build that thing very carefully, and then it's about deconstruction. And this leads to the sort of this movie that's here at the festival tonight, which is the Giacometti movie, which was, I think, ultimately one of the reasons I was so attracted to Giacometti. It's just it's about tearing away, it's about stripping away. And the more you go through life, the more you're stripping things down to their bare bones and finding the truth in things, as an artist and also as a person.
I'm glad you brought up Final Portrait. I was wondering what had led you to Alberto Giacometti.
I just love art. I love art. My dad was an art teacher and an artist, and I love it. And I fell in love with Giacometti because he was like the consummate artist. His work was beautiful and poignant, and it struck a really profound chord in me. And I just found this book, years ago, a Giacometti portrait, and I tried for years to get it made, and finally got it made.
I mean, what's interesting is when usually you have the lives of an artist, it's landscape. You get the soup to nuts, Birth, Life, Death, the greatest hits. But
torture.
You work in miniature here because it's an incident. Yeah,
it's an incident. It's 18 days in his life. And I don't believe in biopics. A biopic doesn't make any sense to me. Because then it just becomes event-oriented. So these are the big things that happened in that guy's life. Well, how much time can we actually spend on those big things? I would much rather spend the time focusing on one small thing, and then I know his life in microcosm. That's much more interesting to me.
And it is interesting how many of the films that you've directed are about creatives thwarted or trying to cut the...
It's all the same movie. I just keep making the same movie. I
Not
do.
at all.
You do sort of keep making, but this is what happens. You do sort of end up keep making the same movie. They're all about identity, and they're about the kind of like the role of the artist in society and the creative process. Every single movie I've made, all five they're all completely different genres. They're totally, but it's all the same thing. I'm very limited.
Yes.
Yes. She agrees. That's nice.
Right. Take this lady here in white.
Your twin sister did, as a matter of fact. Now I can see, yes, this woman who looks exactly like her came up to, she goes, I won't do the accent. My twin sister's going to see you, and, it was like a threat, though, the way she said it. I was like, I never touched her. Yeah. Anyway, she was very nice and, aggressive.
This is the place that makes sorry sound like a threat. Sorry.
So, yeah, it's true.
Sorry.
Yeah. Don't you also use the word apparently a lot? Is that a Scottish thing? Huh? Apparently. Yeah, so it's always like, apparently, you're a man. It's that, one guy did it before, apparently, yeah. Yeah, oh, sorry.
trolled by the audience.
yeah.
Yes, you did, and
Sorry,
I do.
go ahead.
You sort of touched on it earlier. In this world, it seems to be so easy for very well-respected actors to fall into the Mission Impossible 25 formula.
Yeah.
Do you find it's harder now to get good scripts that you haven't written or movies made that have more heart than action effects?
There are more action movies than ever before, but there are still a lot of movies out there that aren't that. And I'm certainly not averse to those movies, to doing the bigger movies. You have to, because otherwise you can't make a living. And they're really fun. But if you were to do a steady diet of sort of independent dramas, first of all, you'd be broke. Second of all, you would go mad. And what happens is, one sort of, plays off the other. One helps the other. In other words, if you do a bigger movie, more people will see it. And then if you do a smaller movie, people will say, oh, that was the guy who was in the bigger movie. I want to go see that movie. I like that guy, or I like that director, or I like that actress. So I've always bounced back and forth between all of them, and television too. There was a time in America where it was sort of, you're a television actor, you're a film actor, you're a theater actor. And I never believed in that. To me, you just had to go where the work was. And hopefully you found the good work. And sometimes it wasn't always good, but you had to work. And that's just the way it is. I can be a little choosier now that I'm older, but not that much really, I guess.
Do you think you could have got something like Big Night made now?
No, my God, no. No.
Well, that's a shame.
No, I know. It would have been really hard. Big Night actually was made for $4.3 million 21 years ago. There's no way you could get that movie made today with just a single financer, which is what that was. The Giacometti movie cost 2.6 million pounds. So what is that? That's what, 3.5 million, maybe, something like that. I don't know, dollars. So. Yeah, I mean, and you had Jeffrey, who's, an Academy Award winner. You have, now granted, it's a small adult drama, but still, so was Big Night, and half of it was in Italian, and it had no plot, so, yeah, no, I don't think you could get it made today. No, not as a first-time director, no.
That's sobering thoughts.
What was that? Is it time for the hunt?
I think she's.
Is that your phone? Oh. Oh, that's all right. You want to read it to us?
She's changed her mind about Lovely Bones.
Oh,
She
is that
actually
what it
thinks
is?
it's
Yeah,
great.
yeah.
Right,
Yeah.
sorry. There's a man with his hand up, nice and assertive there. Yes, waving away.
I'm glad you mentioned television. I want to go back to Murder 1.
Uh-huh.
Yay!
Yeah, yeah.
The portrayal of Richard Cross, when I first met you as a superb actor, a man who looks like a stereotypical producer, talked that way, yet on the stand of the final episode, you revealed how psychotic and insane he was, and I thought it was a really touching moment, and some of the best acting I've ever seen.
Oh, thank you. Thank you very much.
Can you comment?
No, I don't know what to say, but would you write that down for me?
Do you watch old performances of you? Have you watched Murder? Yeah, you're screwing up your face. Yeah.
Sometimes. I mean, if I catch it, I might, but.
I mean, there we were showing
Yeah.
Big Night. I mean,
Yeah.
Have you
It's
watched
okay.
that recently?
No, I watched a little bit of it for an event not dissimilar to this. But,
Basically, your own film's stalking you.
yeah, it's weird, because you do feel, I mean, I'm glad that I've done a lot of other stuff since then, because Big Night is the one that people really love, and yet, and no, I'm very proud of it. I am very proud of it. The last time I sort of peeked at it, it was better than I thought it was, and then I'll look at it again a few years from now and go like, oh, that's a terrible film, But I think that probably the hardest part is when your vanity gets in the way and you think, Yes, even though I was wearing a wig in that film, I was so much younger and slimmer. You know, that makes you feel just sad.
I'm so glad you brought up wigs because I really want to ask about Hunger Games
Yeah.
and your fantastic range of wigs, but also the game show host, and whether there was any sort of particular one that you had in mind when you were...
Well, to me, he was a cross between Graham Norton and like Wayne Newton, or those, you know, those Vegas performers, like
Yeah.
those huge sort of extreme, you know, those magicians or those people who do that, or who were those guys who had the tigers and the
Siegfried and
double-
Roy.
Yeah, both of them, you know, and so that it's that, and then of course just heightened, and it's described in the book what he's sort of wearing and what he, you know, his hair and all that stuff.
The teeth?
And
Those
no,
white
I
and white
wanted the teeth. I insisted upon the teeth. Yeah.
They're a lovely touch.
Originally, what I wanted was I wanted a nose. I wanted him to have a nose that looked like George Hamilton. You know, like that nose that is so fine and long, like it's been carved away over the years by many plastic surgeons. But we couldn't really get it. We couldn't really make it work. So I wanted him to be as plastic as possible. So what we ended up doing was we taped, everything gets taped, pulled back and taped up like this. Then the wig gets put on so it looks like I've had plastic surgery. Then the teeth go in and that heavy tan goes on. So it's disconcerting, and you know, you just want it to be, and it's painful. I mean, it's painful to have your head taped up like that for 15 hours a day. But luckily I'd only shoot for a couple days, so it was easy.
A 5 Tylenol job. Take this lady here.
Do you have a preference over comedic or dramatic roles?
Do I have a preference over comedic or dramatic roles? No, I like to go back and forth between the two. Sometimes you just sort of get aching to do a comedy. And then equally you'll ache to do something more dramatic. It's nice to go back and forth.
How about you and the T-shirt with writing on it?
You talk about acting and directing. When you're on the stage as an actor, is it difficult to put the director part of you away? Do you have the urge to tell the director how you do it?
Yes. Yeah, I do. And sometimes it gets you into trouble, and sometimes it saves you. I made the mistake of doing a play years ago where well, that's the end of that sentence. I made the mistake of doing a play years ago. And I thought, you know what, I'm too conscious of directing now. I need to just trust the director and just listen to what he says and do it. And it went against all of my instincts, and it ended up being a terrible experience. And I wish that I had listened to my own instincts. That said, I'm very happy to be directed. I like to be directed as long as I feel like I'm being challenged. Do you know what I mean? As long as it isn't, I want to be challenged. And I'm very, I mean, I think especially now after 35 years, so a lot of times you kind of end up being the oldest person on the set at this point. So a lot of times you're older than the director and you're more experienced, so they kind of are afraid to tell you anything, I think. But I like to be challenged, and also I want to be able to make the movie that the person wants to make. I'm there to serve them. That's my job, is to be there, and if they have a clear vision and they can articulate it, then, and if I can help them articulate it, that's my job.
Thank you. Excellent question. Gentleman there, yes, pointing at himself.
Have you ever find it difficult
To
to let a character go after you finish playing them?
let a character go? Yeah, the Lovely Bones character, that was tough. I think when I was younger, yeah, not now. Now I just want it all to be over.
Have you ever got to that Michael Caine quote about what he looks for in a role, which is a nice location and
Was that Michael Caine? I thought it was.
It could be so many actors.
I thought it was Edward G. Robinson.
It could
Maybe.
be. Yeah.
He does 3 movies a year, wasn't that it? I do 1 for the money, 1 for the art, and 1 for location.
Yeah.
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 Yeah, that's kind of about it, yeah. Yeah. Location, not as much anymore because, you're
Well, you've
working
got
in...
the world of Barnes.
Yes, exactly. No, and you're away from your family, so that's right.
Take a question from the audience. Yes, gentleman there who's pointing at himself. I love this self-pointing. You really got the hang of this thing. Anyway, yeah.
My favorite show this year is Feud, Betty and Joan. I was just wondering, would you say your portrayal of Jack Warner is exaggerated, or was it more like realistic? Or what do you think?
I hope it's realistic. I mean, it's everything in that piece is slightly heightened, let's face it. But they were big personalities, those people. So do I know really what Jack Warner was like? No, I couldn't tell you. I tried to be as truthful to what was on the page as possible in tone. So it's slightly up there. But I mean, to me, it's really about being truthful, and that truthfulness you can modulate that however you want. You can be really, quiet and subtle and whatever, but you can be really huge. If you think about doing a farce, you can be quite big, but it still has to be completely truthful and logical. And you have to play it for real. Otherwise, it's not funny.
We have got about 5 minutes left. Just want man straight up there saying, yeah, well, I think we know how we're going to use that 5 minutes. You at the back, right by the emergency exit.
Betty, this is a quick one. Did you and Oliver Platt prepare for Beethoven by kidnapping dogs?
A question about Beethoven.
I love that film.
Oh, thanks.
Lovely Bones and Beethoven
Yeah, I know.
actually get together.
Yeah. Whoa, yeah. No. Yeah, no. He had dogs at the time. They were his. He didn't steal them. No. But actually, Oliver and I were very good friends when we were cast in that film. We ended up living together in Los Angeles. It was the first sort of movie I'd gone and stayed in Los Angeles for quite a while working on, and we ended up living together for 3 months making this movie. It was very fun. Ridiculous.
Do you like dogs?
I'm not a dog person, really, no.
That would be a hellish
I
film
know.
then.
No, yeah. Dogs, cats, but I've had them all, but I'm not like an animal person. No. I don't know why. I didn't grow up with animals.
No, that's fair. And
People are always sort of like, oh, don't you love dogs? Or don't you? Like, no, not really. No, I don't. I don't have to. To be a nice person, you don't have to love dogs, right?
checking.
Maybe not. I have cats, but that wasn't my choice.
Right, we're running out of time, so this gentleman here, and also woman with pink hair, I think. You're next. So gentleman with the hand up still. Sorry, is it? Oh, lady! Oh! I'm so sorry. The light is.
The light is
shining
bad.
here. Sorry.
These are, a bit of a giveaway. But anyway,
I can't see them.
would you ever be in a musical?
Not if I wanted to have a career. I've been doing this for 35 years. Have you ever heard me sing? There you go. No.
Beauty and the Beast.
I have been asked to do musicals, and I have always said no. In fact, when Bill Condon asked me to do Beauty and the Beast, and I said, I would love to as long as I don't sing. And he said, no, just a little bit. I said, no, I won't. And he said, no. I said, Bill, I can't sing. He goes, Stanley. I go, Bill, I can't, I'm not singing. So anyway, he got me to sing 2 lines, and that was it. And I saw the poor guy in the recording studio, the musical director, sort of going, the one that he'd go like, ba-da-da, or something, and I'd go, and then he'd go, like, ba-boom, and I'd go, It went on for like 5 minutes, and I finally said, look, you can do that all day. It's not going to change. So don't you have like a knob where you can make it, like, what do you call that? He goes, yeah. I go, we'll do that. He goes, all right. I go, all right, I'm going home. You know, I went, why, you know, you're going to teach me how to sing now? Anyway, that was
like
that.
The mothership in space, Close Encounters of the Third Kind.
Yes, yes, that was me. Yeah.
Now, pink-haired
Anyway.
lady, you have a question?
I guess to round this off, to go back to Fortitude
Mm-hmm.
and your character in that, it's probably one of my favorite performances of yours. And not to spoil it for people who haven't seen it, but what happens to your character is probably one of the most like painful things I've had to watch.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, it's okay, but like I was literally watching it for you, and then stuff happens, and like I wanted to ask about like that, the experience of shooting Fortitude, and your character in particular as well. I found out now that he has to be Scottish, but
Yeah,
like the American Scotland Yard person.
yeah. Yeah, it doesn't really make any sense, does it? Yeah, we came up with a few lines to kind of explain it. Yeah, it was a really good experience. I mean, it was hard because a lot of times we would be shooting. We shot mostly in London. I went to Iceland 3 times, which was great. That was one of the reasons also I wanted to do it, because I had always wanted to go to Iceland. I like northern climates, and it was stunning, beautiful, absolutely beautiful. It was sort of a revelation. And I had a really good time with the other actors, Luke and Richard and Sophie and Michael Gambon. You could just sit and talk to all day. Well, you don't have to talk, he just talks, he just tells stories. And then he doesn't remember he told you a story, so he tells you the next story, same story the next night. But it was really interesting. It was complicated, the plots were very complicated, but ultimately it was a really good experience. Yeah, but Iceland was that was pretty amazing, yeah. No, it wasn't cold. It actually, if you want to know the truth, it was colder shooting in the AirSet studio we were in Hayes, in London, than it was in Iceland. Iceland was perfectly comfortable. Well, is that it?
I'm afraid, I'm trying to think, in some ways we've ended on a bit of a downer for Hayes.
Oh,
and,
sorry.
And you know, maybe we can think of something bright. So maybe
all right.
we'll ask
Do you want me to sing a song?
Yeah. Yeah. No, I'll tell you what. You've got Final Portraits screening tonight.
Yeah.
I don't think there are any tickets left, but you can always try. What else are you up to?
I don't know.
Excellent.
Yeah,
Come to the
it's
Usher
such an
Hall.
exciting. It's an exciting career. Well, I'm going to go do a movie, a sort of thriller in the fall, in Toronto, and then I'm looking at. I have a television thing that I want to do called City of Women. That takes place in Berlin at the end of the war. That would be like a 5-part series that I've adapted from this book, and then. Hopefully directing a play or being in a play next year in London. So that's kind of the plan, and doing a cookbook.
And doing a cookbook. Well, we already know how to make a great omelette.
Yeah.
And we know that Stanley enjoys bouncing around with women. We've learned a lot today. We've learned a lot. The Edinburgh audiences ask fantastic questions.
Yeah.
And we've also learned that we're out of time and we are going to have to stop. I'm really sorry. I know this is one of those things where you think we could do 2 hours.
Oh, it could go on forever.
Yeah.
But listen, I want to thank you very much for this. I really appreciate you doing this, and I appreciate all your really nice questions, good questions, and for being here. It's very nice.
Stanley,
I'm
it's been a
honored.
joy.
Thanks.
Stanley, sit.